Hi guys, how are you doing? Hope you're well. So in today's midweek mystery, I wanted to do something a bit different. Sorry that my background is different to my other midweek mystery videos. I just wasn't able to set up in my usual place, so I'm probably just going to be filming here and maybe in those places from now on. I don't know, I don't really know, but anyway, in today's midweek mystery, I really wanted to do something that I used to do with my students when I was teaching psychology, and that is looking at the Innocence Project, and I really wanted to incorporate that more into my midweek mysteries. Obviously I talk about, you know, psychological phenomenons, and I also talk about, you know, unsolved cases, the actual perpetrators. I've talked about all of that. However, when I was looking back at what I also wanted to include in my midweek mysteries, I realized that I've never really talked about what I used to love teaching to my students, which was all about cases in which people have been wrongly prosecuted and how that's impacted their lives. And when I used to introduce forensic psychology to my students back in the day, I used to get them to research the Innocence Project and pick out a case, and they used to present that to the class. So I thought that would be really interesting for me to incorporate here on this channel, and for you to also see that even though we talk about these cases and these circumstances, there are times when people have been wrongly accused of a crime and that has seriously damaged and ruined their life. So I really wanted to highlight some of these cases, just to put it out there that these people are innocent, and also just to make us aware that it's not always what it seems. Hopefully if you enjoy this video, you can give me a thumbs up as well, and also if you like this kind of content, I do a mixture of videos on my channel, but if you like this kind of content, then don't forget to subscribe, and yeah, hopefully you can come back next Wednesday for another video. Okay, so I just wanted to explain what the Innocence Project actually is. It was founded in 1992 by Peter Neufeld and Barry Scheck in Cardozo School of Law, and what the Innocence Project actually aims to do is to exonerate the wrongly convicted people through DNA testing, and it's also there to try to reform the criminal justice system so that this does not happen again in the future. Now I'm just going to read off their mission from their website, and it says it's to free the staggering number of innocent people who remain incarcerated and to bring reform to the system responsible for their unjust imprisonment.
I gave up in prison several times. I fought, I don't know how many appeals I filed.
I had just got denied parole for the 5th time, and one of the counselors that was working there, he pulled me. He wasn't my counselor. He just pulled me to the side. He said, "Look," he said, "Marvin, you know, there's an organization out there that may be able to help you."
I had a lot of support from the Innocence Project. They were very, very helpful. That day I heard about the DNA testing and I was excluded. I was overwhelmed with joy.
It was a great relief to be able to walk out of there a free man after 14 years. I'm able to spend time with my grandkids. I can hold them in my arms. I can take them to church, take them out to eat.
My mom was suffering from dementia and congestive heart failure. Despite of what her body was saying, her spirit was like, I can't die until my son gets out of prison. And she was able to see me completely exonerated on TV. And right after that, she died. She died at peace.
I wish my parents would have lived longer to see this, but I know in spirit they're here, and they will continue to be here for as long as I am here, and as long as my daughter is here. And if I am to have any more children, they will live through them, you know. But I'm thankful to be home.
As I was looking on the website, there are like many cases on the Innocence Project website. You can go and explore them for yourself. But as I was looking on the website, I really wanted to start off this series or this particular part of Midweek Mystery with looking at the case of Timothy Cole. And the reason I wanted to look at Timothy Cole's case is because Timothy Cole never actually lived to see his exoneration. He never lived to see his innocence being brought forward, and I just thought that was such a sad thing, and it's such a sad case. And unfortunately there are people like that out there, just like Timothy Cole, who have been wrongly accused, have been incarcerated, and have not necessarily lived to see their name being brought to justice and to see their name being cleared. So I really wanted to bring this out there for Timothy's family, and just so that people really know that he is innocent of these crimes. Now, as I said, Timothy Cole did not live to see his name being cleared. He was actually born Timothy Brian Cole, and he died in a Texan prison in 1999 whilst he was serving a 25-year sentence. He served this sentence for a rape that he didn't commit. Now, nearly a decade after his passing, DNA evidence from the crime posthumously exonerated Cole and implicated another man as the perpetrator. So let's look more into the crime in which he was wrongly accused. Now, it was March 24th, 1985, and a Texas Tech student named Michelle Mellon was parking her car in a church car park, and this was located just across from her dorm in Lubbock, Texas. And she said an African-American man approached her and he asked her to help him start his car with jumper cables. She said that she didn't have any cables, so she couldn't help him. And when she told him this, she said that the man had reached into her window and unlocked her car door. She said that she screamed and she bit the man's thumb. And then while she was doing this, she noticed that he also was carrying a knife, and he started to hold the knife to her throat. Whilst holding the knife to her throat, he lay her down in her car and he moved into the driver's seat of her car. She said that he drove to a vacant field outside of town and he forced her to perform oral sex, and then he raped her. The disgusting thing about this is after he did all of this to her, he then drove her car back to Lubbock, Texas, and he took $2 in cash from her, a ring and a watch, and then he left on foot. After this happened, Michelle Mellon did call the police and she did report this attack. So that was the crime, and that was a very terrible thing to happen to Michelle. And obviously during that state she would have been very panicked, she would have been very scared, very fearful, and quite possibly, you know, recollections of the man would have been quite difficult for her. So we have to obviously bear that in mind. She may not necessarily have had a vendetta against Timothy Cole, so let's just bear that in mind when we look at the investigation. On the Innocence Project, one thing you will notice is that a lot of the people that are exonerated are actually African-American males, and I don't know, it just goes to kind of show the issues, there are underlying issues surrounding that, and we can go into that a lot more with a lot more detail, but at the moment I'm not really going to focus on that. But they do draw on the race of the perpetrator and the race of the victim and the race of the accused as well within the Innocence Project and when they're detailing these cases. So I'm going to tell you that Michelle Mellon is a white woman, and she described the perpetrator to police as being a young African-American man, and she said that he was wearing a yellow shirt and sandals, but she couldn't give any other details. She said that he had smoked cigarettes throughout the attack as well, and that's something that's quite important when we later look at Timothy Cole. Now, during this time there was actually a case already being investigated around what the police titled the tech rapist. The tech rapist was suspected in 4 other attacks on the Texas Tech campus. So Michelle Mellon's own attack was quite similar to the 4 other attacks that had been reported, and maybe fitted the MO of this tech rapist. And after she reported this attack, now Michelle Mellon's attack was a 5th attack, and so 9 officers were brought on board to conduct surveillance around the Texas Tech campus. And composite sketches of the attacker also was put into the Texas Tech campus newspaper. Let's look at Timothy Cole and who he was. So Timothy Cole was a 26-year-old Army veteran, and he was actually studying business at Texas Tech during this time in 1985. Now, when Mellon was attacked and raped, Cole was actually at home studying, and his brother was there as well, and his brother was actually hosting a card game night. Now, 2 weeks after Mellon was attacked, Cole went to a pizza restaurant which was near the Texas Tech campus, and the restaurant was just a few blocks away from where Mellon's attack took place. And it's believed that Cole had a conversation with a detective that was outside of the restaurant, and I believe that was just a casual conversation, but this conversation made him a suspect. I don't know what words were spoken, I don't know how they came to that conclusion, but from what I can tell, it was kind of just like a casual conversation, and he automatically became a suspect. And after that, a detective went to Cole's house and took a Polaroid photo of him. So they didn't take him down a station and do, you know, a proper custody photograph. They just took a Polaroid photograph of him. Now, police showed Michelle Mellon this photograph, this Polaroid photograph of Cole, and they also included it within a lineup of other photographs. 5 of these were mugshots, and then you had Cole's one, which was just a Polaroid picture taken at his house. So already Cole's picture stood out from the other 5. And not only was the way in which the picture was taken different, Cole's picture was the only picture in which the suspect was facing the camera. So Cole was the only one facing the camera in this picture, whilst the other 5 suspects had their side profile taken. And according to police, Mellon was immediately sure that Cole was her attacker, and she said, "That's him." I wonder why that is. Like, this really frustrates me because that should never have happened. The next day, Cole was brought in and an in-person lineup was conducted with Cole and 4 prisoners. Mellon again identified Cole, but victims from the similar December and January rapes that had taken place on the Texas Tech campus also viewed this lineup, and none of them identified Cole as their attacker. However, based on Mellon's identification, Cole was arrested and charged with aggravated sexual assault. You can see the major flaws that occurred within this case and how frustrating it really must have been for Cole and his family. I mean, I can't even imagine what he must have been thinking. I'm just really angry by how this was conducted. So let's look at the trial and let's look at the evidence, the forensic evidence that was brought against Cole. So Cole was tried by a jury in Lubbock in 1986 for the rape of Mellon a year earlier. However, he was never tried or charged with committing the other rapes because none of the other victims could identify him from the lineup, the in-person lineup. Now, Mellon testified for the state and identified Cole in court as the person that had raped her. Now, a forensic examiner from the Texas Department of Public Safety testified that an analyst in his lab had examined the rape kit collected from the victim at the hospital after the attack, and he said that the test had shown that sperm was present on Michelle Mellon's body. When they carried out serology testing, and if you didn't know what serology testing was, because I had to double check that for myself, serology testing is a scientific study or diagnostic examination of blood serum. So when they actually carried out this test, they found evidence of a type A secretor on the swabs. The analyst had told the jury that both Michelle Mellon and Timothy Cole had type A blood. Now, the interesting thing about this particular serology analysis is that Michelle Mellon was found to be a secretor. Now, what that means is that she secretes her blood type into other bodily fluids other than blood. So we can determine her blood type through, for example, her saliva or mucus. However, Cole's secretor status was unknown. So it's possible that if they found the blood type to be a type A through the maybe semen that they found on Michelle Mellon's body, then if Cole wasn't a secretor, then that wouldn't be possible for them to have determined his blood type through that semen. Does that make sense? I hope it really does. because I was trying to work this out in my head, and I think that's where they're getting at with this when they explain that part. Now, the analyst also testified that his lab had composed foreign pubic hairs collected from the victim's underwear and body during her hospital examination. And to be honest, they didn't really find anything conclusive. They said that the hairs were similar to Cole's, but they couldn't necessarily say that it was definitely his hairs. So again, they have a similar blood type, type A. He has type A. The blood type that was found through the fluids was type A, as well as Michelle's blood being type A. Again, similar but not conclusive. His hairs, again, similar but not conclusive. And I just want to read a statement that was put on the Innocence Project when they were looking at this case. And they said, because there is not adequate empirical data on the frequency of various class characteristics in human hair, the analyst's assertion that hairs are similar is inherently prejudicial and lacks probative value. So basically they're saying that he's just assuming that it's going to be Cole's hair because generally speaking African-American hair is just the same anyway. It's kind of on the same line, similar lines to that. Now, remember what I said about Cole's location during the time of Michelle Mellon's attack? He did have an alibi. He was studying at home, his brother was at home as well. His brother was playing card games with many friends. He had loads of friends around. They were all there on the night of the crime, and they all testified that Cole was in the apartment during the time the attack was taking place. And also, if you remember back to Michelle Mellon's statement about the attacker smoking whilst they were attacking her, well, Cole had asthma, severe asthma, and he did not and could not smoke cigarettes. Now, Cole's attorney presented all of this evidence to the court, but he also presented the evidence surrounding the similar attacks that had taken place and that had continued to occur in the months after Cole's arrest. But for some reason, the judge refused to allow any of this evidence to be brought into the trial. And also, an interesting fact is that Cole had actually been charged for a similar attack 1 month before the Michelle Mellon attack. And Cole brought this to the trial, and he did state that, you know, when fingerprint analysis was done, his fingerprints did not match the fingerprints that were found on the victim's car in that previous attack. However, the judge again did not allow any of this evidence to be presented at the trial. So the jury did not hear any of this evidence. Based on the information that the jury had heard and that the jury were allowed to hear, they took 6 hours of deliberation and they did find Cole guilty. And the next day he was sentenced to a 25-year sentence in prison. So let's look at what happened during his time in prison and what led to his exoneration as well. Now, Cole did try an appeal, but his initial appeals were denied. In 1995, after the statute of limitations on the 1985 rape had expired, a Texas prisoner named Jerry Wayne Johnson actually came forward and wrote to police and prosecutors in Lubbock County, and he actually confessed to committing the rape of Michelle Mellon. Now, during this time, Johnson was serving a 99-year sentence after being convicted for 2 sexual assaults with similar characteristics to Cole's conviction. However, the really sad thing was that Johnson's letters were not acknowledged by the police. And unfortunately, Cole had died in 1999, and at that point, Cole had served 13 years in prison. At the time of his death, he died not even knowing that Johnson was trying to confess to the crime. The year after Cole had died, Johnson wrote again to a supervising judge, and this time the case was moved to a different judge and was rejected without comment. However, thankfully, his letters and confessions somehow managed to reach the Innocence Project of Texas and Cole's family as well. Now, lawyers at the Innocence Project of Texas sought posthumous DNA testing in the case, and Lubbock prosecutors agreed. And DNA testing that was conducted on the semen from the crime scene actually excluded Cole and implicated Johnson as the perpetrator. And Cole was cleared by DNA tests in 2008. And at a hearing in February 2009, Johnson again confessed to the crime before a judge, Cole's family, and Mellon. And the Innocence Project joined with the Innocence Project of Texas as a co-counsel on the case, and a Texas judge officially exonerated Cole at an unprecedented posthumous hearing on April 7th, 2009. And a Texas governor called Rick Perry pardoned Cole on March 1st in 2010. Now, since Cole's posthumous exoneration, the state of Texas has actually passed the Timothy Cole Act. And this was basically there to increase the compensation that's paid to exonerees to $80,000 per year served. Also expanding services offered to the exonerated after their release, and adding compensation for the family of an exoneree if they've been cleared after death. The state also created the Timothy Cole Advisory Panel on Wrongful Convictions in 2009, and that was there to study the prevention of wrongful convictions in and around the state. Now, to this day, the victim in the case, Michelle Mellon, is present, and she speaks and writes about the case to raise awareness about misidentifications and wrongful convictions. And she has been quoted as saying, "I was positive at the time that it was him. I was shocked when I found out it wasn't him. I joined Tim's family in working to exonerate him because it was the right thing to do. Timothy didn't deserve what he got." This case is just such a sad case. I mean, it's a sad case for anybody that has been wrongfully convicted of a crime, has had to spend any length of time in prison for a crime they didn't commit, has had their name tarnished, has had their family basically grieving for them because they're not around. And the fact that he died, I mean, that to me is the saddest thing, that he died not even knowing that somebody had come forward to clear his name. And it's just a sad case, and it just angers me to see just how poorly this case was conducted. And I'm just thankful that DNA testing is around for such cases as this, because without that, even though Johnson did come forward to, you know, to confess to being the perpetrator in the crime, without the DNA testing, Johnson's claims was just rejected and ignored. If the DNA testing wasn't available, Cole would probably still be seen as a rapist, and even after death his name still would have been tarnished, and that just isn't right. The fact that he had served 23 years, so yes, he served 13 physical years in prison, but his name wasn't cleared until a further 10 years after his passing. So he had served 23 years as a person that was seen as guilty of a crime that he did not commit. Now, we don't know how much his family got in terms of compensation, but I'm glad to see that the compensation for these victims, in my opinion, are available, and they are going to be rightly compensated for the way they have been treated. And I'm glad to see that his family is also going to be compensated for the way that he was treated as well. So hopefully you guys found this to be an interesting case, regardless of how frustrating it is. And yeah, if you want me to look more into other cases from the Innocence Project, then don't forget to let me know down below. Let me know your thoughts on this case. Do you know of any other cases that are quite similar to this, of wrongful convictions? Let's talk about them down below. What do you think about this particular case as well? Are there any other factors you think that were involved in his wrongful conviction? Thanks so much for watching, guys, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Have a good week. Take care. Bye.